Well, it's been a while. In fact, it's been longer than I'd actually prefer, but here we are. If you haven't noticed by the new background, I moved, and by the sound quality. So instead of going into this great detail, here's the long and short of it. The day I moved and brought my PC over, it died. Now, we're troubleshooting it. I think it's a graphics card issue, but I'm not entirely sure. So for the meantime, reviews are going to be this more podcasty, off the cuff kind of video. So feel free to put this on in the background. I know it's echoey. There's not much I can really do about it at this point. I am still kind of in the process of moving, so hopefully the more stuff I get in the space, the less echoey it gets, and hopefully I'll have a new PC up someday soon so we can go back to the crispiness of the Elgato Wave mic. But in the meantime, thanks for your patience. Now, the last note on the pivoting is I know on the community tab I had posted and teased that we were going to do another series for the next round of videos that came out. Well, we're not. So this is going to kind of be spur of the moment reviews on games that I'm playing, as I'm currently going through my backlog. So first off the list, as you can see behind me up there, I gotta look behind me, I'm not used to recording like this, is Hogwarts Legacy. And I'm gonna break this review down in kind of three parts. One is gonna be the narrative, two, it's gonna be the gameplay, and three, it's gonna be the completionist aspect of the game. Because that's how I played the game. I am gonna stay away from most story spoilers, because honestly, some of the best parts of the game are the main narrative and the relationship quests that you find yourself doing along the way. So, to start, you start as a new fifth-year student, and in the lore and setting of the game, it's not as unheard of as you might think. Um, Basically, as you play the game, you find out there have been other students that that start school as fifth years, but it is relatively uncommon. So you start the game off with you and Professor Fig meeting up with one of Professor Fig's contacts in the Ministry of Magic. You board your flying carriage to Hogwarts, and the Ministry, I forget his name, I think his name is George. George hands you, we're going to call him George. George hands you a canister, and he informs you that it was given to him by Professor Fig's late wife. And upon the canister, there's a very strange insignia. Now, the astute gamer will notice that it's the insignia in the box art, if you can see right there, that insignia. Now, let me put this back up on the shelf. Now, you notice that the insignia is glowing, and only you can notice this. Enter your main character power of being able to sense ancient magic. So, upon noticing this, your carriage is attacked by a dragon. George, unfortunately, dies, and you immediately notice the carriage is now being pulled by Thestrals, which Harry Potter fans will probably love that little touch. I will say this, the team at, I believe it's Avalanche. I'm losing my mind. I've been playing so many games lately. Avalanche. The team at Avalanche really did kind of pay attention to details with some of this stuff, and I do appreciate it as a fan of the books and of the movies. So, once the dragon attacks, you fall out of the carriage. You and Professor Fig grab onto the canister, and it becomes apparent that the canister, or the key within it, was a port key. You both get teleported to some ruins in the Scottish Highlands, and here's where you kind of learn the basic mechanics of the game, using potions, using your basic cast. And as you proceed through the ruins, you find a portal, which only you can see, that takes you to Gringotts. You proceed to go through the Gringotts cavern system, which is reminiscent of the first movie, and it's kind of fun to kind of sit and watch everything fly by. And upon reaching the end, you find a vault. And within this vault, you find a pensive, and you learn a couple more utility spells and things like that. And this kind of sets up the game. You see a memory of two gentlemen who kind of set up this vault, who set up these trials, and they kind of set up the plot, the overarching plot going forward. This is also where you meet the game's villain, Ranrock, and after an encounter with him, you are teleported to Hogwarts, where you see the title, the camera pans out, you hear the game's theme, and then you go to your sorting hat ceremony. I'll touch on this in the gameplay section, which we're pretty much going to get to because I don't want to go too much more into detail with the story, but as you progress through the story, you'll have different character quest lines that'll help flesh out your classmates. But mainly the story is you trying to solve the mystery of the vault in Gringotts, as well as trying to stop Ranrock, all the while trying to catch up to your fellow fifth years and prepare to take your owls. However, the catching up to your fifth years kind of takes a back seat as you proceed through the rest of the game. So now on to gameplay. Gameplay-wise, it's a third-person RPG. And I was originally going to say RPG is a very loose term, but it does have the base hallmarks of an RPG. You can create your character, you can customize your character, you have talent points. You even have some dialogue options, although there's not too much choice and consequence in this game. Luke Stevens points it out best, where you can choose to learn the unforgivable curses, but using them has no consequence in the game at all. And this becomes very apparent at the end of the game, where you're surrounded by faculty of the school and you have the ability to use an unforgivable curse and nobody bats an eye. So gameplay-wise, the ruins are very simple. They're your tutorial. And the opening hours are kind of a tutorial for the world and the maps and the movement and that nature. But the first bit you really get to interact with after the tutorial ruins is the sorting hat ceremony. Now, this ceremony goes one of two ways. You can kind of RP and fully immerse yourself as much as you can in the game, and when the hat says this is what you are, that's what you stay with based on the questions you answer. Or you can go, I don't think so, and you can then choose the house that you want to be in. The same thing happens later on when you get your wand, which is completely cosmetic. There is no difference to what type of wood your wand's made of, or, it's one of those things where the developers really wanted to just give you another way to customize your character so you can, truly be the quote-unquote wizard or witch that you always imagined. Which isn't inherently bad. If they were going for the much more hardcore RPG sense, obviously the house you get, that's the house you're in. The wand you get, that's the wand you get, like, end of discussion. But they do let you have a little bit of creative liberty with the customization. And if I'm being honest, I kind of appreciate that, because I customized my character's wand to be just how I would imagine their wand would be. And then later on in the game, when you find customizable wand handles, which I'll get to in a minute or two, then I found one that really kind of matched that style. So you get sorted into your house. Professor Weasley takes you to your common room. You learn how to get into your common room, and the game kind of sets off from there. Now, the bulk gameplay is kind of broken up into a couple categories, in my opinion. One, you have your combat, which is how you'll be defending yourself. It's pretty self-explanatory. You'll be fighting monsters and animals and dark witches and wizards. And then you have your exploration. Those are kind of the two main parts. And then the third part is your student life, which encapsulates a bunch of different things. So upon starting the game, Professor Weasley hands you a book and says, listen, you're behind your other classmates, which is fine. It's normal. We kind of expected that. Here's this field guide. Go take it and, fill it up. It'll help you catch up to your students. And the field guide is basically your main menu. You open it up, you can access your gear, you can access your talent points, you can access challenges, your collections tabs, messages that other characters send you, your quest tab, settings, all that kind of stuff. And as you go throughout the game, you do get a sense of it filling up. And that's mainly in the collections tab and the challenges tab. But what happens is she gives you this and she says your professors are going to give you some extra credit to kind of catch you up and teach you spells that your other class have known for years. Now, this gameplay mechanic, it's only prevalent, I would say, probably maybe in the first half or so, because once you learn all the spells, your teachers have no more assignments for you. You basically stop seeing them. There are points in the main story where a character you need to interact with goes away. So, for example, at one point in the story, you need to tell Professor Fig something, but he's away at the ministry. So your quest log updates and says just to basically live as a student. So this is where you'll attend classes, you can go and do side quests. And when you look at your quest log, there's usually a row of question marks, and those are kind of the main objectives, so to speak. It may not necessarily be the quest that pushes the plot forward, but it may be a quest that says go to potions class, and what that does is that'll trigger something to happen so you can then interact with something that progresses the next part of the main quest or the next part of the story, so to speak. So what'll happen is you'll go about your day doing side quests, doing main quests, exploring, and you'll get an owl from your professors. And the way they set up owls is they're kind of like codec transmissions, or in Borderlands when you get a call on your Echo. It's people talking to you, telling you to meet them somewhere, asking you to do something for them. So instead of it just saying you have an owl and then you have to open your menu, read all the text, and go okay, they kind of keep it in universe. So you'll get an owl, and in the top left-hand corner, you'll get the notification, and then the envelope will open. You will see the face of the character who sent it, and then you will hear their voice as if it's, similar to the Howlers in the movie, where they open up and it's a vocal letter to you. And then you can obviously go back and read them in your field guide, but you get these owls as you're about, and maybe your professor's owl will say, I need you to drink a Maxima potion and then buy and use a focus potion and another potion simultaneously. And once you do those prerequisites, then you'll get an updated quest notification that says go to potions class in the daytime. You go to potions class, you'll see a little cutscene, and then your professor will be like, okay, now I'm going to teach you Descendo, or whatever the spell may be. And then you learn the hand motion for the spell, which is basically just a quick time event. My thing with these is they are specifically shaped, so what they relay to you is they're supposed to be the hand motion, right? So we all know the classic, swish and flick, right? Swish and flick, all that stuff. And it shows you that in the little QuickTime event, you have to guide this arrow along a set path. But once you complete it, instead of your character doing that motion, they just kind of like throw their arm around, like they do when they cast Revelio. So that's a little bit of a bummer. There aren't too many spells in games, so maybe it was a time thing, maybe they didn't think of it, but I would have liked to see the character, kind of do the motion, so to speak, when learning new spells. Now, speaking of spells, there are combat spells and utility spells, and you get a couple sets of spell wheels. So think of spell wheels like your gadget wheel from Ratchet and Clank, where you can flip through pages that have all your things on there. So, for example, I had 2 spell wheels for combat spells, and then 2 spell wheels for utility spells. Combat spells range from Accio, Levioso, Defendo, and your utility spells range from Lumos, Reparo, Wingardium Leviosa, and then a couple spells that are basically meant for the Room of Requirement and Beasts. So, which I'll get to in a minute. So basically what you do is you go about your day, you were exploring the castle, exploring the Highlands, learning spells, going to class, all the while trying to stop Ranrock and uncover this plot. And there's essentially 2 hubs in the game. There's the overarching open world, which is the Highlands surrounding Hogwarts. But then there are 2 smaller maps that kind of have their own... They're not instances, but when you look at your map, you can use the Flu network to fast travel. But when you want to fast travel to Hogwarts, Hogwarts has its own separate map and so does Hogsmead. And I guess the developers did that to not confuse people. The only downside is you can't fly in Hogsmeade for whatever reason. You could get on your broom outside of Hogwarts, fly halfway across the map, fly back to, the gate, or the quad, the courtyard in front of the Great Hall or whatever, and land your broom. Even on bridges in between sections of the castle, you get on your broom and you fly away. That's it. That's done and dusted. But for some reason, Hogsmeade has this huge invisible wall around it that when you get close to it, you have to kind of just descend and dismount your broom if you don't fast travel. Excuse me. So what then happens is Hogsmeade is your main hub, so to speak. It's got all your shops where you can buy potions, you can buy herbology supplies, potion supplies, things for the room of requirement, outfits. It's also a place you can go to sell all of your stuff. Now, it's not the only hub where you can do these things. There are hamlets scattered around the map which may have a shop, but the shop may only be a potion shop. It may only be a beasts material shop, where Hogsmeade kind of has all of it. Hogsmeade is also the hub for the PlayStation exclusive quest, where you go into this instance dungeon, which is kind of in-depth compared to a lot of the other areas in the game, and it takes a little while to get through, but once you get through it, you get a shop, and you can go and sell things in those shops, and it's a good time. So the thing with the open world, while we're still talking about all of this, is there's a lot to do. I mentioned earlier the field guide has challenges and collections. Challenges are just broken up into 4 categories: combat, story quests, exploration, and the Book of Requirement. And these are kind of to guide you through sections of the game. Your combat challenges will have you doing certain attacks, killing certain enemies, and all these challenges have reward tracks that give you things like, for example, outfits and cosmetics, because there's a transmog system in the game, and thank goodness there is, because some of the gear doesn't look that great, and you don't get bonuses for wearing like full sets. So for example, for collecting certain field guide pages, which is one of the main collectibles in the game, you get this set called the Hogwarts Regalia set. But you get no bonus for wearing all of it. So, what I basically did is when I was in the castle doing school activities or going to lessons, I would transmog my gear to kind of look like different school uniforms. And you have different options, different cloaks, different sweaters, different things like that do give you a variety. When I was out in the field, I ended up settling on this set that had like this dragon leather coat that was very long, a set called the Protector set that I got for doing one of the challenges, a hat, and like dueling gloves. So you, like I mentioned earlier, you have the freedom to go out and you really customize your character to kind of look the way you want to look. And it's that trope of like, you could have the goofiest outfit on and be the most serious point in the game, and nobody bats an eye. So these reward tracks are kind of a way that you progress your character, because there is gear. The transmog set isn't just cosmetic only. You do get gear in this game. You have, let's see if I can remember, scarves, cloaks, outfits, gloves, hats, and glasses. And each piece of those clothing, I guess, has stats to them. And obviously, any RPG, you want to make the number go up. And the transmog system is just there to make sure that you can look the way you want to look. Now, along with doing all of these challenges, there is a kind of like a side challenge in the world called the Merlin Trial. And basically what they are is they're just these little puzzles. They take maybe 30 seconds to do, depending on the puzzle. And they are the only means of upgrading your inventory, which is very small to begin with. And I've seen people complain about this because you do have to do a lot of them. I think you have to do like 25 or 50 Merlin challenges to get all your bag slot upgrades. Which is... it's not that bad. I ended up doing them as I went along. But that's mainly the challenges, right? And then you hit kind of milestones for doing main story quest, and the Book of Requirement is for the Room of Requirement, which we're still going to get to after I finish wrapping this up. But the world is not overly expanse. It's a relatively smaller map compared to most open world RPGs. And it does follow that 40-second rule that The Witcher introduced. Luke Stevens did a very in-depth critique on the game. It was like 3 or 4 hours long. I'll put that video in the description because in it, he does kind of map out everything and show you where the big hubs of stuff to do are, and then within those big hubs, there's like little smaller hubs, and he calculates the distance to get to everything. So there's stuff to do. It's just the stuff is kind of samey. So remember the collections tab I talked about? Well, the collections tab is broken up into categories. It's got basic cosmetics, wand handles. It's got like a bestiary so you can see all the enemies you've fought. It's got a section to look at the brooms you've made, the potions you've made, the ingredients you've collected, all this kind of stuff. And as you go out and about in the world, you can find these Revelio pages. By casting Revelio at certain spots, a page will appear. And what that page does is it's basically like your journal. It kind of gives you information on the item you're looking at or the area you're in. And this is meant to kind of catch you up to speed, to your classmates, but it gives you a reason to go out and explore. And as you're in the open world, you'll find things like bandit camps, more or less, where you have to go in, clean out some bandits, collect the treasure chest. You'll find dungeons throughout the game. Some you have to solve like a block puzzle to get in. There are caves. There's these butterflies that lead you to treasure. There's hedge mazes. There's side quests. There's all these little things. The Merlin trials. There's even 2 battle arenas. If you did pre-order the game with the Dark Arts pack, you get a 3rd battle arena. But with all of that, once you kind of do one of each, that's kind of all there is to do. That's about it. Now, as you progress the game, things will unlock, and you'll get access to more areas of the map, more flue locations. You'll get access to more of the little side activities. Like, once you eventually go to astronomy class, you'll find that there are these astronomy tables scattered throughout the map, and you can only use them at night, and you kind of connect the dots, and there's a challenge tied to it and an outfit set tied to it, and you could do that kind of stuff. But the big thing is, after a certain point in the story, you get access to the Room of Requirement. And this is kind of like your secondary hub space. This is player housing, for lack of a better term. Right? You can go in here, you can decorate it as you see fit, put different pictures on the wall, put different rugs on the floor, set up potion stations, herbology stations, all this kind of stuff. There is essentially, if you've played Destiny, it's an engram system where you'll find gear in the world that is unidentified, and you bring it to the Room of Requirement and you identify it. You can also build a gear upgrading station, because gear can be leveled up for a price, and it can also be slotted with traits. Traits you get from challenges, from bandit camps, and they give you little stat boosts, like you take less damage from spiders, your Incendio spell causes more damage, and they're tiered. Basically, think of traits as gems from World of Warcraft or enchantments from Skyrim. You go to this item in the Room of Requirement that you have to conjure, called the Loom, and if you have enough materials that you've gathered from different beasts, you can you can slot them in. You can say, okay, I want my chest piece to have the Incendio trait. I want my gloves to have the spider resistance trait, and things of that nature. So you can customize that, although I will say the bonuses don't really feel massive. And on the topic of things not feeling massive, the spells are okay. Your basic cast is like Mega Man's pea shooter. It kind of does chip damage, and then what they want you to do is they want you to combo these spells to do more damage. So for example, one of the basic combos you learn early in the game is you use Levioso to levitate an enemy, use Accio to pull an enemy near you, and that kind of keeps them stunned and immobile. Then you can hit them with your basic cast, or you can hit them with things like Incendio or Defindo to cause massive damage. There are, speaking of combat while I'm on the subject, I know I'm kind of bouncing around, but this is off the cuff. There's no script. I'm just doing it by rote. There are mini bosses in the game as well as regular bosses. And mini bosses kind of have this title of infamous foes, and they have a bigger health bar at the top of the screen, and they're in set locations that you find. But also, even some of the creatures are mini bosses. The trolls in this game are tanks. It'll take you a couple minutes to take them down because you can't, your spells don't upgrade. You just have these traits, your spells, and then your ancient magic, which is like a special attack, and that has a meter that fills up every 10 hits or so that you land on an enemy. So that's kind of how combat works. Back to the Room of Requirement. In the Room of Requirement, you can get these, I forget the name of them, but they're like beast habitats. I think there's 4 in total that unlock as you progress in the game. And what you are given is like Mary Poppins' bag if it was a Pokeball. So throughout the map, there's beast sanctuaries where you'll see different creatures like unicorns, hippogriffs, Neasels, things like that. And you can kind of catch them, bring them back to your, I think they're vivariums, I don't know, correct me in the comments, but bring them back to these like habitats in the Room of Requirement and release them. And then you could build things like a feeder or like a toy box to play with them. And you can kind of customize these areas like you can in the Room of Requirement. You can only put, I think, so many species in a set location before you have to go do the other one. But the other part of this is breeding. So you can catch a male or a female version of this creature and breed them, and this is tied to trophies. You can also catch these creatures and then sell them to a shop for gold if you're short on cash. Now, there are 3 mounts in the game. 2 of them are creatures. One is a hippogriff. One is, I forget the name of this beast. It's a huge, like, dinosaur-looking thing that you get towards the end of the game, and that's kind of like your ground mount. And then there's your broom. The problem is you can upgrade your broom, and then all those mounts become irrelevant, so to speak. So that's kind of what you do. There's stuff to do, and it can get kind of samey. This is where my problem with the game is, because towards the middle of the game, it was kind of boring, because it basically was like, okay, go live as a student. And it was just going around and doing these little side things, waiting for something to happen. Basically, at those moments, you also have these relationship quests where some of your classmates give them to you, and they have their own little unique storylines. And progressing those stories can sometimes trigger the main quest to progress on. But that was one of my problems with the game. I kind of got bored towards the middle because I was just doing these little side objectives. And that kind of takes me to the last portion of this video, which is the completion experience. Now, my completion criteria may be different than yours. I know it's different than Gerard's over on The Completionist. Some people think completing a game is getting everything in the game, clearing the map, doing all that stuff. That's great. If that's what you love to do, that works for you, perfect. Mine is getting the Platinum Trophy, because most times, not all, but most, developers set the Platinum and the trophy list up to kind of take you through the game world and get you those things. So you end up seeing and doing most, if not all, the things the developers put in the game. Sometimes you have multiplayer trophies, which aren't that great. Sometimes you have combat trophies, which aren't that fun. Thankfully, Hogwarts only has a handful of combat trophies, and none of them are missable. Now, that being said, everything I said about cosmetics and all that stuff, that's important, because to get the Platinum in Hogwarts Legacy, you essentially have to 100% the game. And that means filling out your Field guide, 100%. There's a little thing at the bottom of the field guide where the challenges tab is that tells you how much it's completed. It got to the point where I finished the main quest and I was like, oh, that's neat. And you get this nice big cutscene at the end. And then you go and talk to Professor Weasley and she looks at your book and she goes, oh, okay, you got to get ready for your owls now. And then you have a quest step that says, finish the field guide and then go to the House Cup ceremony. To me, I read that as, oh, they want you to finish the field guide to finish the game. That's just me reading that. That's probably not. Once you probably do the House Cup ceremony, the game's probably over, right? But when you look at the Platinum trophy list, if you go online to, I think it's like PlayStation trophies or PSN profiles and those websites, they give you the roadmap and they say, listen, this is a long Platinum. Because you have to do things like do all of the Merlin trials, which there are a lot. Even after you get all the backpack upgrades, there's still a ton. I'm only 60% done with them. Breed every beast. Hit every enemy with ancient magic, which is one of those combat trophies I mentioned earlier that isn't missable, thankfully. It's basically clearing the map, doing all the side quests, getting all the collectibles, filling out all the collection pages. So that's getting everything you can build in the Room of Requirement, all the cosmetics, all the brooms, all the wand handles, all this stuff. It's a lot to do. In fact, I honestly put the game down because while I wasn't necessarily bored, I knew that it would just take, I would get bored and burnt out trying to complete it all in one sitting. In fact, that's what happened earlier this year when I beat Cyberpunk. I wanted to go for the Platinum, and to get that Platinum, you have to clear every section of the map. You have to do all the side quests and all the NCPD, alerts or whatever. And that takes a while. There's a lot to do. Thankfully, it's not terrible. It's doable. It could have been a lot harder. It's just a bit tedious. Now, one of the other things you need to do is you essentially need to play the game up to a certain point 4 times to get the completionist, because it wants you to reach a certain story beat as a character from one of each houses. Whether you get you're in Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Slytherin, it wants to do that. It has a trophy for each of them. That could be their way of being like, oh, this is replayability, but most people just save the game right before the Sorting Hat ceremony, do the Sorting Hat ceremony, and then go up to that story beat and then just stop. So I will say though, it's a good game. It's not an amazing game. It's not a perfect game by any means, but it's good and it's fun, especially if you're a Harry Potter fan. If you're a Harry Potter fan, you're going to probably enjoy this game more than most people. There's rumors that it's going to be a trilogy. I don't know how true that is. If it is, I think that's really cool. You do year 5, 6, and 7th, and on your 7th year, you graduate Hogwarts. I can't speak. We've been going, oh man, this is like a 30-minute video. I thought it was going to be like 15. But it's fun. It has its dull moments. It has its lulls. It can drag towards the middle half of the game. But it does have moments where I was brought right back into it. Like certain story beats hooked me right and pulled me right back in. And they were like, okay, come on, let's go. We're going to go on an adventure. It's also one of those games like Skyrim where you can kind of just turn your brain off and go explore. Right? It's nothing that you need to be like hyper focused and, G Fuel and just, it's like one of those games where you just kind of sit there and like, you know what? There's all these icons in this part of the map. I'm going to land there and just kind of walk around, which is how I've been kind of handling the completionist progress of it. But overall, it's a fun game. If you're a Harry Potter fan, I definitely recommend playing it. If you're not a Harry Potter fan, but you're kind of intrigued, I'd say probably wait till it goes on sale and gets a little bit cheaper. I bought it at full price because it was a game I was very excited for when it got announced. I don't regret my purchase, and I hope if there is a sequel, they can kind of iron out those details, maybe not make the collection as big and bloated as it is, because I'm gonna be honest, it does feel a little bad to have to get every single thing in the game, and there's so much stuff. I had to use multiple guides to find all of these pages for the journal to kind of fill everything out. But with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, I'm going to bounce because I have another game that I'm playing through, which might possibly be the next video. In the meantime, however, I am starting to stream a little bit more. I'm doing like a little Destiny leveling challenge, and then I'm probably going to pick something else to stream. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a fantastic day whenever you're watching this. And until next time,